Easter happens in taking a second look. I am not a heretic. I am not trying to reduce resurrection to some New Age jargon, nor am I trying to water it down so that the modern mind can comprehend it. But rather, I would like us to understand something of the deepest down meaning of resurrection and how Christ happens in real people, happens still. People need to be liberated from religious cartoons, coloring books of resurrection that are superficial, medals that are measly. People want to affirm resurrection. People want to believe in Easter. But I propose to you, it will not happen until they experience the shock of recognition. A shock of recognition that can come in taking a second look at someone or some event. In that moment, we can receive another and they, us. The light on their face, a gesture, a tone, a voice, their laugh, the way they walk or care, doing something just like someone we knew who has maybe even passed. We catch that glimpse of whatever in that person right next to me to us, and it shocks us. It catches our breath. We take that second look and see someone not here physically with us because of distance or death. And all of a sudden, who is so with us in this stranger even. And when this happens to me along the way, I pull out my phone and quickly text maybe a former student on the other end of the world to say, I was just thinking about you. Or I saw somebody today who reminds me of you. You and I, we can be struggling with resurrection, and all of a sudden, in the looking again, we see that there is more to resurrection than superstition or schlocky religious art. Because in a moment, we saw or heard something that made us look again, and we did. I remember some months after my mom died at the age of 67. My mom, as many of you know, was a whistler. And I told her before she died, I knew how I would find her in heaven. I would listen for her whistle. My brother, Ron, never knew I told her that. But one late afternoon, several months later, I came home to see my dad, and I heard this whistle. And it was my brother. And all of a sudden, there was my mom, as real to me as at any time when she was alive in that home. Just there, in the other room, in her whistling, in his whistling. Do you know why people don't recognize Jesus after his death? Likely because it would mean for all of us to see the face painted in our Bibles, made to look like photos of him, or hanging on the walls of our homes alongside the pictures of our families. Again, pictures of him made to look like photos of him, appearing to us like that when we call on him even, pray to him. Even though we have no clue what he looked like, no clue of his features, We will never see him in this world as he was because we don't recognize what we've never seen. How would we know it was him? If I had never met you and you tell me you're going to pick me up at the airport, my first question is going to be, what do you look like? What will you be wearing? Can't do that with Jesus. But when it comes to Jesus, if we take that second look at someone there and make a space in our seeing for more goodness in others and in the circumstances, even messy and painful circumstances, we will begin to sense something real and maybe even more real and more substantial than if it was his actual face, which once again, we would not know if we saw him because we had never seen him. Seriously, my friends, Easter is about Jesus present in the body and voice and thoughts of someone else. And so tangible and so real. The risen Christ appeared in people, real, live people after his death. And that is no less real. It is real too. Something in this real person standing in front of me reminds me of someone else, and it is as if they are all of a sudden so here with me, in him, in her. We don't know what he looked like, but we do know. What we do know is his deeply held values, his compassion, what he saw when he looked at people, what he lived for, what he died for. So that when we see that in someone, anyone, we remember him. Like what we do right here at this Mass tonight, when we do what he did and remember him and recognize him in the breaking of the bread. Take a look at the Easter stories, all of them. The one of Mary Magdalene tonight, grieving in the garden, and there's a man over on the other side of the garden, and she thinks he's the gardener, and she begins this conversation with him about what's going on. And there's something, this second look to him, there's something in what he said that triggered the response, Rabbi, Rabbi. Something in him reminded her of him. The same with the story of Emmaus. Two disciples, two students of Jesus walking along, complaining, sad, down, confused. Jesus, their friend, had just been put to death. They thought he was the one. They're talking to each other. And as they walk, and I felt this on the Camino so many times, somebody walks up alongside of them. And all of a sudden, this stranger is in their midst. And they continue to talk. And they were with him. And then it was time to depart. And they looked at him again and something in him said, why don't you stay? Made them want to say, why don't you stay with us? And in the praying at the beginning of the meal, they saw something that reminded me of him. And their eyes were opened. He was there. In this stranger, he was there. In somebody else, they felt him. They each experienced something of the shock of recognition. Looking twice at someone opens up their goodness to us, and what is good in them, even in someone who maybe hurt us, even in a circumstance like a pandemic or a war, in whatever it is, we experience this divine encounter in some of the good manifests there. And we look again and see that. There's a piece of art over here. 50 days that will be with us, the 50 days of Easter that will be with us. First time I saw it, I liked it. I really liked it. It was this explosion of light and of color. But when I took a second look, I saw resurrection. paintings need a second look for their deeper meaning. So do people. That's how resurrection happens. Atheists ask me fairly often about the specifics of Easter after his death. But because of so many of those cartoons and so much bad art, it's just not connecting for them. When actually the Easter mystery is available to us, even in that atheist asking those questions, and in you and in me too. You see, we took his place. We took his place. We are taking his place in the world still. Shocking to us, like to Mary of Magdala and the disciples and the guy cooking breakfast on that morning when they were out fishing, and Thomas in the room with the others, so full of him that for a second, it's like, is this a stranger or is this him? Recognizing people living like he did in this world. Whenever we sense goodness like that, wherever we see love in human beings or in circumstances, it's only the second look, even at an enemy, even if something felt scary and empty to us, only in that second look might we experience the shock of recognition, recognizing him in them, the Christ happening in people. How about this Easter? We take this seriously and just go ahead and look again and see. In the shock, their meaning. That when another human being mediates a divine encounter for us, that is not somehow less real for us than it was for the first and earliest church. That is a real experience of the Christ happening. That is how Easter happens. It takes that second look, looking twice. Wow, she looks like someone I know, moment. As if to tell us that she's very much alive still. She is still happening in this world. I imagine Mary seeing that guy who was a gardener and thinking, he looks so familiar. Who does he remind me of? Before she cried out, Rabbi. I learned just recently that if you want to improve your focus and seeing, you have to look at something for 20 seconds. Then it registers. Then it changes the brain. Then the shock of recognition becomes the joy of recognition.